My parents kicked me out like trash. I returned with $18.5 million, and they didn't recognize me. You know what's funny about fake happiness? It has a specific smell. Overripe limes mixed with something cheap and sweet that burns your nose. I was 17 when I finally understood what that smell meant. It meant the evening would end with screaming. Saturday afternoon. Our backyard. Dad stood by the grill flipping burgers on this ancient piece of junk that should have been replaced years ago. Rust ate through the bottom like cancer. You could literally see the concrete patio through the holes. But replacing things cost money, and we were the kind of family that acted like we had money while secretly drowning in the shallow end of broke. The whole setup looked perfect from the outside. Picture book American barbecue. Except the meat was the cheapest stuff from the discount bin at Savamart, hidden under Dad's nuclear-grade hot sauce that could strip paint off a car. The neighbors stood around holding red plastic cups, smiling with their mouths but not their eyes. Dead eyes. The kind you see on people who show up to things out of obligation, not friendship. I stood near the fence watching this performance. 17 years old, and already tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. You ever feel like you're watching a movie of your own life? Like you're not really there, just observing? That's what it felt like. Decorative happiness. I called in my head. All the props in the right places. All the lines delivered on cue, but hollow underneath. The sound of sizzling meat mixed with forced laughter. Someone's kid was crying somewhere. Dad kept flipping those burgers with this cheap metal spatula that had Grill Master stamped on the handle. The irony wasn't lost on me. Master of nothing, I thought. Master pretending everything's fine, while the roof literally leaked when it rained, and there were 3 maxed-out credit cards hidden in Mom's underwear drawer that she thought nobody knew about. I knew about them because I'd learned to be invisible in that house. When you're invisible, you see everything. The air tasted thick. Late summer in the Midwest does that. Humidity that sits on your skin like a wet blanket. But underneath the char grill smell and the heat, there was that other scent. The one I'd known since I was maybe 9 or 10. Overripe limes and cheap liquor. The scent of evenings that started with laughter and ended with doors slamming. Mom was inside, doing whatever Mom did, avoiding things. Mostly, she had this talent for being present, but absent at the same time. Physically there, but mentally checked out to some beach resort in her head, where bills didn't exist, and her daughter wasn't a walking disaster. Speaking of disasters, my sister showed up around 4, 25 years old, and still treating our parents' house like a free hotel with meal service. She came through the side gate with her newest boyfriend trailing behind her, Caleb, with AC, not AK, because apparently that mattered to her. Caleb looked exactly like every other guy she brought home. Tattoos creeping up his neck. That specific haircut that said he spent more time on his appearance than looking for actual employment. Tank tops showing off arms that were toned from the gym but had never done a day of real work. The kind of guy who thought owning a skateboard at age 30 was a personality. But what really got me was a cologne. Cheap stuff from the drugstore that he'd apparently bathed in. It hit you from 15 feet away. Synthetic vanilla and something that was supposed to smell like pine trees, but actually smelled like car air freshener. It mixed with the lime and alcohol smell and created this toxic cloud that made my eyes water. My sister had this smile on her face. The cat that ate the canary smile. The I have new smile. And I knew before she even opened her mouth that whatever was coming would somehow make everything worse. She waited until everyone was watching. Of course she did. Drama was her oxygen. She pulled Caleb close and announced they were expecting. Pregnant. Baby on the way. The whole 9 yards. Dad dropped the spatula. Mom came rushing out from the kitchen like someone had fired a starting pistol. The neighbors did that thing where they clapped politely, but you could see them doing the math in their heads. 25, no job, boyfriend who looked like he sold energy drinks at the gas station. No ring on her finger. Yeah, the math wasn't looking great. But Mom and Dad acted like she'd just won the lottery. Hugs and tears. And oh my God, we're going to be grandparents. The whole performance. Meanwhile, our roof had 3 separate leaks that we caught with buckets when it rained. There was a crack in the foundation that was getting bigger every year. The hot water heater made sounds like it was trying to communicate with the dead. But sure, let's celebrate. I stood there watching this circus and felt nothing. Not happiness for my sister, not anger, not even disappointment. Just this hollow space where feelings should have been. I'd learned to turn that part off somewhere around age 14, when I realized my family was never going to be the kind you see in commercials. Caleb had this smug look on his face like he'd accomplished something. Like accidentally getting someone pregnant was some kind of achievement. He kept one arm around my sister while taking a burger off the grill with his other hand. Didn't even wait for it to be done. Just grabbed it and took a bite, grease running down his chin. My sister was already talking about names, about how they'd need the spare bedroom, about how this baby would change everything, bring everyone closer together, heal old wounds. The same spare bedroom that was currently full of boxes of junk we'd been meaning to sort through for 5 years. The same house that could barely support the people already living in it. I excused myself. Nobody noticed. Being invisible has its advantages. I went to my room and lay on my bed staring at the ceiling. There was a water stain up there shaped like Texas. I'd been watching it grow for 2 years. Started small, like a coffee cup ring. Now it covered about 2 square feet. The roof leaked directly above my room. I told Dad about it 6 times. He kept saying he'd get to it. He never got to it. My room was small, barely fit a twin bed and a desk. The carpet was the same industrial gray that had been there when we moved in 12 years ago. Stained in places from God knows what. The walls were still that generic off-white, that landlord's use. We owned the house, technically, but it had the soul of a rental. Nobody really invested in it. Nobody really cared. I had a desk I'd found on the curb in the nice neighborhood across town. Solid wood, just scratched up. I'd sanded it down, re-stained it myself with leftover stain from when Dad half-finished the fence 4 years ago. My laptop sat on it. 3 years old, refurbished, but mine, bought with money from mowing lawns and helping old Mrs. Patterson clean out her garage. The thing about being 17 in a house like that is you start planning your escape early. Some kids plan for college. I was planning for survival. 9 months until I turned 18. 9 months until I could legally leave and nobody could drag me back. I had a backpack in my closet, already packed, had been for 6 months. Change of clothes, toiletries, copies of my important documents, birth certificate, social security card, high school transcript, all in a waterproof folder inside a backpack that could go at a moment's notice. Paranoid? Maybe, but I'd learned to trust my instincts in that house. And my instincts had been screaming for years. The barbecue wound down as the sun started setting. Neighbors left. Caleb and my sister stayed. Of course they stayed. They were probably already planning to move in. I could see it playing out. They'd take over the spare room, then the living room. Then my sister would be back in her old patterns while Caleb played video games and Mom and Dad pretended this was all perfectly normal. I stayed in my room, did my summer reading for school, tried to focus on the words, but mostly just stared at pages. The house got quieter. I heard Caleb and my sister leave around 8. Heard Dad cracking open what was probably his 4th or 5th can of something. Heard the television go on downstairs. The usual Saturday night routine. Around 11, I got hungry. Stupid mistake. I headed downstairs to grab something from the kitchen. Moved quietly out of habit. The stairs creaked on the 3rd and 7th steps, so I avoided those. The hallway was dark except for the flickering blue light from the TV in the living room. Dad had fallen asleep in his chair. His mouth hung open, that same cheap smell radiating off him in waves. The kitchen light was on. That should have been my warning. Should have turned around right there. But I was hungry and 17 and stupid. So I kept going. I heard voices before I saw them. Low, conspiratorial. The kind of tone people use when they're talking about something they don't want others to hear. I froze in the doorway to the dining room. The kitchen was visible through the open doorway. Mom sat at the table. My sister across from her. Dad must have woken up and joined them because he was there too, leaning against the counter. The air in there was thick with that smell. Overripe limes and something sweet and chemical. There were glasses on the table. A mostly empty bottle of something clear sitting between them like evidence. They hadn't seen me yet. I stood in the shadows of the dining room, invisible like always. Dad was talking. His words had that loose quality, slightly slurred at the edges. He was explaining something to Mom and my sister, using that reasonable tone, the one that made terrible ideas sound logical. He said they had 9 months. 9 months before I turned 18. If they moved now, they could use pins. Persons in need of supervision. It's this legal thing where parents can basically tell the court their kid is uncontrollable and get them placed in a state facility. The court system takes over. The state pays for everything. My brain went cold. Ice water in my veins. He kept talking, kept explaining. They could say I was violent, uncontrollable, a danger to myself and others. Didn't matter if it was true. Just mattered what they told the judge. Once I was in state custody, they'd have the house to themselves. Could turn my room into a nursery for my sister's baby. Little Casey, they were calling it already, even though they didn't know if it was a boy or girl. Mom was nodding, actually nodding, asking questions about the process. How long would it take? Would they have to go to court? Would it look bad? My sister just sat there smiling. Same smile from the afternoon. The cat that ate the canary smile. Dad brought his fist down on the counter. Not angry. Emphatic. Emphasizing his point. He said I was a mistake anyway. An accident they'd never really wanted. Better to let the state feed me and house me. Better to move on and focus on the grandkid. On family that actually mattered. The bottle on the table caught the overhead light. Cheap stuff. Bottom shelf. The kind that burns going down and makes people say things they maybe think but usually keep inside. Except I don't think the bottle made them think these things. I think it just made them brave enough to say them out loud. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds. Felt like hours. My heart was doing this weird thing where it beat too fast and too slow at the same time. My hands were numb. My face felt hot. But my brain went into this crystalline clarity. They were going to throw me away. Ship me off to some state facility. Not because I'd done anything wrong. Just because I was inconvenient. Because keeping me around was harder than getting rid of me. Because my room would make a nice nursery. I'd always known they didn't love me. Not really. But there's knowing something theoretically, and then there's hearing it confirmed in your own kitchen at 11 at night, while your father explains to your mother and sister how they're going to legally dispose of you like trash. I backed away. Slow. Quiet. They never saw me. Never knew I'd heard. I made it back upstairs without the steps creaking. Muscle memory. Years of practice being invisible. My room felt different. Smaller. The air tasted different. Like I was already seeing it from the outside. Like it wasn't mine anymore. Like it had never been mine. I pulled my backpack out of closet. Already packed, remember? I grabbed my laptop. My phone charger. Checked my wallet. $247 from lawn mowing and odd jobs. Not much. Enough. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I thought I'd be shaking. Thought I'd be crying or angry or something. But I just felt calm. Resolved. The decision was already made. Had probably been made years ago. I just hadn't known it yet. There was a safe in my parents' room. Cheap combination safe from Walmart. I knew the combination because Dad was predictable. He used my sister's birthday for everything. I waited until I heard him snoring downstairs. Waited until Mom's bedroom door closed. Then I went in. The safe clicked open. My birth certificate was in there. Social Security card. Title to the card Dad had signed over to me on my 16th birthday because it wasn't worth the insurance anymore. A beat-to-hell 1999 Pontiac Grand Am with 180,000 miles and check engine light that had been on for 2 years. But it was mine. Legally mine. Title in my name. I took my documents. Left everything else. Closed the safe. Left the room exactly how I found it. Down the stairs. Avoiding the creaky ones. Through the living room where Dad was now snoring in his chair. Out the front door. I didn't slam it. Didn't make a statement. Just pulled it closed behind me with a quiet click. The Grand AM was parked on the street. battered gray paint, dent in the rear quarter panel. Passenger mirror held on with duct tape, but the engine ran. Mostly. I popped the trunk and threw my backpack in, got in the driver's seat. The interior smelled like old fast food and the vanilla air freshener I'd hung from the mirror 3 months ago that had stopped working after 2 weeks. The key slid into the ignition, worn smooth from years of use. I turned it. The engine coughed, wheezed, turned over, settled into its usual rough idle that the mechanic said was probably a vacuum leak, but would cost $400 to fix properly. I sat there for a minute, engine running, hand on the gear shift, looking at the house, dark except for the flickering TV light, in the living room window, peeling paint on the siding, weeds growing through the cracks in the driveway. The whole place looked tired, worn out, like it had given up pretending a long time ago. I should have felt something. Sadness, maybe. Anger. Fear. Something. But I just felt empty, like I'd left the important parts of myself behind years ago, and was just now catching up with the physical escape. My phone was in my pocket. I pulled it out, stared at the screen. 11:47 p.m. I had exactly one person I could call. One person who might actually pick up at midnight. One person who'd ask me how I was doing, and actually meant it. Uncle Mark, my dad's younger brother. They'd had a falling out maybe 4 years back. Something about money Dad owed him. Something about Dad's lifestyle choices. Uncle Mark had stopped coming Christmas, stopped showing up for birthdays, cut contact with the whole family. Except me. We'd kept in touch. Secret phone calls on holidays, texts on birthdays. He always asked how I was holding up, always said if I needed anything, let him know. I never took him up on it because asking for help felt like admitting defeat. But sitting there in my dying car with everything I own in a backpack in the trunk, defeat was kind of already established. I pulled up his contact, stared at it. My thumb hovered over the call button. What would I even say? Hey, Uncle Mark, my parents are planning to ship me off to juvie so they can turn my room into a nursery for my sister's accident baby with her loser boyfriend. Can I crash at your place? I hit the call button. It rang 4 times. I almost hung up. Then his voice came through, rough with sleep, but alert, asking what happened, if I was okay. I told him I needed to come stay with him. Didn't explain why. Not yet. Just asked if I could come. Now, tonight, the pause felt like forever, like standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to see if the ground would hold. Then he told me to come. Said he'd be waiting. Said he'd put coffee on. I thanked him. Hung up. Put the phone in the cup holder. The gear shift was cold under my palm. I shifted into drive. The transmission clunked. It always did that. I gave it gas. The engine rattled. The whole car vibrated like it was held together with hope and rust. I pulled away from the curb. Didn't look back at the house. Didn't need to. I'd already said goodbye to it years ago. The rest of me was just catching up. The street was empty. Street lights making pools of yellow on the asphalt. I turned at the corner. The Grand Am suspension squeaked. The radio was broken, so I drove in silence except for the engine noise and the wind through the gap in the passenger window that didn't seal right anymore. Uncle Mark lived 2 towns over, about 40 minutes on the highway. I merged onto the interstate. The dotted lines on the road blurred together. White dashes streaking past like time itself was trying to get away from what I'd left behind. The engine settled into its highway rhythm, rough but consistent. The check engine light glowed amber on the dash. I'd stopped worrying about it months ago. When you're driving a car that should have been junk 5 years ago, you learn to ignore warning lights. They're not warnings anymore, just ambient decoration. My hands were 10 and 2 on the wheel, exactly like they taught in driver's edition. Everything by the book. Legal. Careful. Because the last thing I needed was to get pulled over. 17-year-old kid driving alone at midnight with everything he owns in a backpack. That would raise questions I didn't want to answer. The highway was empty. Just me and the occasional semi-truck hauling cargo to somewhere that mattered. I stayed in the right lane. Let the semis pass. Kept it at exactly 5 miles over the speed limit. fast enough to make progress, slow enough to stay invisible. Invisible? I'd gotten good at that over the years. Funny how a survival skill becomes your whole identity. I could walk through a room, and people wouldn't remember I'd been there. Could sit at the dinner table, and nobody would ask my opinion. Could exist in that house for 17 years, and the main question on their minds was how to get rid of me efficiently. The anger hit somewhere around mile marker 47. Just bubbled up out of nowhere. My hands tightened on the wheel. Knuckles went white. I wanted to scream. Wanted to turn the car around and go back and tell them exactly what I thought of their little plan. Wanted to see their faces when they realized I'd heard everything. But that would have been giving them power they didn't deserve. They'd already taken 17 years. I wasn't giving them another second. The anger faded, left me empty again. Hollow. I focused on the road, on the white lines, on the amber glow of the check engine light, on the squeaky suspension and the rattling engine, and all the small mechanical failures that kept the Grand AM from being a real car and made it just transportation, just movement, just distance between me and them. Uncle Mark's exit came up on the right. I took it. The off-ramp curved down into a sleeping town. Street lights, closed gas stations, a 24-hour diner with 2 cars in the lot. Normal people living normal lives while I drove through their town at midnight, running away from people who were supposed to love me. His place was on the east side. Small house, ranch style. Needed paint, but not desperately. The lawn was cut. There was a truck in the driveway. Work truck, ladder rack on top. Uncle Mark did construction, restoration work, made an honest living with his hands while his older brother made excuses and let everything fall apart. The porch light was on. That small detail hit me harder than it should have. He'd turned the porch light on for me, left it burning so I could find my way. Such a tiny thing. But when you spent years in a house where nobody bothered to leave a light on if you were coming home late, tiny things become everything. I pulled up the curb, killed the engine. The silence was immediate and complete. No more rattling. No more whine through the broken window seal. Just quiet. Just me and the cooling engine ticking in the darkness. The front door opened. Uncle Mark stood in the doorway, backlit, so I couldn't see his face. But I could see his silhouette. Solid, steady, waiting. I grabbed my backpack from the trunk, closed it with a soft thunk, walked up the driveway on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. Each step was real. Each step was final. Each step took me further from the word mistake and closer to something I didn't have a name for yet. Uncle Mark didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations, just stepped aside and let me in, told me the coffee was ready, told me we'd talk in the morning, told me I was safe here. Safe. I hadn't felt safe in so long I'd forgotten what the word meant. The door closed behind me with a quiet click. And somewhere 2 towns over, in a house that smelled like overripe limes and broken promises, my parents slept peacefully, never knowing I'd heard every word. That first night at Uncle Mark's, I slept on his couch, woke up to the smell of actual breakfast cooking, eggs and toast. Simple stuff. But nobody was yelling. Nobody was slamming cabinets. Just quiet morning sounds and food that wasn't burnt or forgotten. Uncle Mark didn't ask questions. Not that first day. Just told me I could stay as long as I needed. Said we'd figure out the details later. The relief hit me like a physical thing. Like I'd been holding my breath for 17 years and finally got to exhale. The phone rang around noon. Uncle Mark looked at the caller ID. Held it up so I could see. My dad's number. He put on speaker. Didn't say hello. Just waited. My dad's voice came through. Loud. Angry, demanding to know if I was there. Uncle Mark stayed quiet. Let him rant. Let him work himself up into a full rage. Then Dad said it. Said Uncle Mark could keep the trash if he wanted it. That they didn't need me. Didn't want me. That I was his problem now. Uncle Mark ended the call. Didn't say a word to my father. Just pressed the red button and set the phone down on the kitchen counter. Looked at me. Asked if I was okay. I nodded. Didn't trust my voice yet. Hearing it out loud was different than hearing it through a doorway. Being called trash directly to someone who might actually care made it real in a way that hurt worse and better at the same time. Uncle Mark had this workshop attached to his garage. That's where he kept his tools, his materials, everything for the restoration business he ran. He told me I could set up in there. There was a cot, some space, privacy, better than the couch. The workshop smelled like sawdust and machine oil. Good smells, honest smells, smells that came from actual work instead of covering up the lack of it. The cot was military surplus. Thin mattress on a metal frame, but it was clean. The wool blanket scratched, but it was warm. I set my backpack in the corner, hung my jacket on a nail. That was it. That was home. Uncle Mark's business was restoration work. Old houses, historic buildings, the kind of detailed carpentry that required patience and skill. He had maybe 6 guys who worked for him. Steady guys, showed up on time, did the work right. The kind of crew my dad would have mocked as tryhards while secretly being jealous that he couldn't keep a job for more than 3 months. I finished high school that spring, graduated with decent grades. Not great. Hard to focus on calculus when your family's trying to institutionalize you, but decent enough. Uncle Mark came to the graduation, sat in the audience. My parents didn't show, didn't call. I told myself I didn't care, mostly believed it. Summer hit, and Uncle Mark offered me work, part-time at first, cash under the table since I was still 17 for another few months. Demolition mostly, the grunt work nobody else wanted. Pulling up old flooring, breaking apart plaster walls, loading debris into dumpsters until my back screamed and my hands blistered. I loved it, every brutal second of it. Physical work that left me too tired to think, too tired to remember overheard conversations in kitchens late at night, sweat and dust, and the satisfying crash of a sledgehammer through rotted wood. This was honest. This was real. This mattered. The crew was good to me. Didn't pry. Didn't ask about my situation. Miguel taught me how to use a reciprocating saw without cutting off my own fingers. Tommy showed me the right way to swing a sledgehammer using momentum instead of muscle. These men who owed me nothing taught me things my own father never bothered with. 5 months in, mid-October, the leaves were turning, and the air had that sharp edge that meant winter was coming. We landed a big job. Some historic property on the east side. Old mansion from the 1800s. Family made their money in textiles, exporting fabric overseas back when that actually meant something. The main house was being preserved, but there was this separate building, the old archive, where they'd kept business records, fabric samples, all the paper documentation of an empire that died 100 years ago. The foundation was compromised. Water damage, structural issues. Our job was to tear it down to the foundation and salvage anything worth keeping. Saturday morning. Most of the crew had the day off. Hunting season. Family stuff. Just me and Uncle Mark on site. We'd been working this project for 2 weeks. Had most of the upper structure cleared. Now we were down to the foundation itself. Thick stone. Limestone blocks the size of coffins. Hand cut. Fitted together without mortar in some places because the old-timers were just that good. The work was brutal. October sun beating down despite the cool air. Each stone weighed maybe 150 pounds. Some more. We used pry bars. Leverage. Basic physics applied with steel and sweat. My hands were raw even through work gloves. Limestone dust-coated everything. Got in my mouth. In my lungs. Made me cough up gray phlegm for days afterward. Uncle Mark worked the north corner. I took the south. We'd been at it maybe 3 hours when my pry bar hit something that didn't sound like stone. Metallic. Hollow. Different. I cleared away more debris. Busted up mortar. There was a gap between 2 foundation stones. And wedged in that gap was a box. Not a box. A chest. Heavy. Dark metal that might have been lead. About 2 feet long, 1 foot wide, maybe 8 inches deep. The surface was dull, oxidized, sealed with what looked like lead solder around every seam. I called Uncle Mark over. He looked at it, looked at me, shrugged, told me to pull it out. Finders keepers on demo jobs. Anything valuable went to property owner. But old junk? That was ours if we wanted it. Getting it out took another hour. The thing was wedged tight. We had to break away more of the foundation stones. When it finally came free, I nearly dropped it. 30 pounds, maybe 35. Solid weight, dense, the kind of heavy that makes your arms shake. We hauled it up to ground level, set it on a flat piece of plywood. Uncle Mark had a utility knife, started scraping at the solder seal. The metal underneath was pitted, corroded, but the seal itself looked intact, airtight. Whoever put this together didn't want water getting in, didn't want air getting in, wanted whatever was inside to stay exactly as they left it. The seal broke with a sound like tearing fabric. Uncle Mark pried the lid up. The hinges were gone, rusted away to nothing, so the whole lid just came off. Underneath was another container, ceramic, glazed. The glaze was cracked but holding, some kind of amphora shape, ancient looking, but the container protecting it was modern enough. 19th century at the oldest. Uncle Mark carefully lifted out the ceramic vessel, set it on the plywood, used a utility knife to carefully chip away at the wax seal around its stopper. The stopper came free with a soft pop, like opening a jar of preserves. The smell hit immediately. Sulfur, salt, something organic and wrong. Like meat that had gone bad, but not quite rotted. The kind of smell that makes your stomach clench and your sinuses burn. Inside, the amphora was paste. Yellowish, creamy, the color of old mustard or spoiled butter. It looked wet, but didn't move like liquid, more like thick paint or old grease. Completely unimpressive. Actually kind of gross. I was disappointed. Expected gold coins or old documents or something actually valuable. This was just some old, spoiled gunk that had been sealed away for reasons nobody remembered. Uncle Mark had the same thought. Told me to chuck it. Old oil, maybe. Some kind of industrial lubricant from when the building was operational. Not worth keeping. Not worth the smell. Just garbage someone had sealed up and forgotten about. But the chest itself was solid. Heavy gauge lead or lead line steel. Waterproof. The welds were clean despite the corrosion. I said I'd keep it. Clean it up. Use it for tools in the Grand AM. The trunk latch was broken and stuff rolled around back there. A sealed metal box would be perfect. Uncle Mark gave me that look. The one that said I was making more work for myself over nothing. But he shrugged, said it was my find. My call. My project, if I wanted to waste time on it. We loaded it in his truck. Finished the day's work. Hauled 3 tons of limestone block to the recycling center. Got paid cash. Grabbed sandwiches from the deli on the way home. By the time we got back to Uncle Mark's place, I'd half forgotten about the chest. I cleaned it that evening. Used degreaser and a wire brush. The lead underneath was actually pretty solid. The solder joints were crude but functional. Whoever made this wasn't a craftsman. Just someone who needed something sealed and figured out how to do it. The ceramic amphora went on a shelf in the workshop. Still sealed. Still smelling like bad chemistry. I figured I'd deal with it later. The chest ended up next to my cot, about the right height to use as a nightstand. I put my phone on it, my alarm clock, some books. It was perfect, utilitarian. One man's garbage vault becomes another man's furniture. The American dream, right there. Life settled into a rhythm. Work during the day. Too tired at night to think. Weekends were split between more work and try to have something resembling a normal teenage existence, which is how I met Amber. The public library, 3 blocks from Uncle Mark's house. I went there to use the free Wi-Fi. The laptop I'd brought from my parents' house was dying. Battery lasted maybe 20 minutes. Had to stay plugged in. The library had tables. Outlets. Quiet. Better than trying to work in the shop with the radio on and Uncle Mark banging around. Amber worked the circulation desk. 19. Community college student. English major. The kind of quiet, pretty that sneaks up on you. Not flashy. Just real. She had this way of really listening when people talked, made eye contact, remembered things. We started with small talk, book recommendations, complaints about the library's computer system that evolved into actual conversations, then coffee at the diner down the street, then movies on her nights off. By November, we were dating, actually dating, like normal people, like I deserved normal things. She never pushed about my situation. I told her the basics. Living with my uncle, working construction, graduated high school, planning to do community college in the spring. She didn't need to know about kitchens late at night, or the word mistake, or the sound of my father's voice saying they didn't want me. Some things you keep inside. Some wounds you don't show until they're scarred over. December came. The work slowed down. Construction in the Midwest winter was brutal. Too cold for exterior work. Interior jobs only. We did a lot of drywall repair. Painting. The detail work that kept us employed when everyone else was laid off until spring. The chest sat by my cot. Reliable as furniture. I'd wiped the amphor down. Sealed it back up. The smell faded to barely noticeable. Just another object in the workshop. Part of the landscape. Easy to ignore. Until I wasn't ignoring it anymore. It was a Friday night. Mid-December. Cold enough that my breath fogged in the unheated workshop. I'd been working on repairing some cabinet doors. Got yellow paste on my hands. Mineral oil and stain, and who knows what. Wiped them on an old rag. The rag was crusty. Stained with 100 different projects. I tossed it on the windowsill. Meant to throw it in the wash. Forgot about it. Saturday morning. Bright sun. The kind of cold, clear day where everything looks sharp and defined. I walked into the workshop and stopped. The rag on the windowsill. It was glowing. Not glowing. Wrong word. But the color. Deep purple. Royal purple. The kind of purple you see in paintings of kings and emperors. Rich. Saturated. Almost unnatural. I picked it up. Held it to the light. The purple was where I'd wiped my hands. But I'd been working with yellow stain. Light-colored stuff. This purple was deep. Intense. And it was only on the parts of the rag that had been in direct sunlight. My brain made the connection slowly. The yellow paste on my hands. The amphora. The sealed chest. The rag in the sunlight. Purple. Deep purple. Royal purple. I opened the amphora again. The smell was still there but fainter. The paste inside was still that same yellowish cream color. I touched it. Rubbed a tiny amount between my fingers. Smeared on a fresh white rag. Set that rag on the windowsill. Waited. 2 hours. The change was gradual. The yellow slowly darkened. Turned lavender. Then deeper. Then that same royal purple. Only the parts in direct sun. The parts in shadow stayed yellow. It was the light. The ultraviolet. Some kind of chemical reaction I didn't understand but could watch happening in real time. Magic that wasn't magic. Just chemistry I was too dumb to comprehend. I didn't tell Uncle Mark. Not yet. Didn't know what to tell him. Hey, that garbage we found turns colors in the sun? Sounded stupid even in my head. But I kept the amphora. Kept the rags. Kept watching the purple deepen every time sunlight hit the paste. Amber came over that night. We were watching videos on my phone. Lying on the cot. The workshop was cold, but we had blankets. She was warm next to me. Real. Solid. The kind of normal I thought I'd never have. YouTube algorithm did its thing. Recommended a video about ancient textiles. Archaeological discoveries. New techniques for analyzing old fabrics. She clicked it because she was an English major and found that stuff interesting. I watched because she was watching. The video talked about a discovery in Israel. 2021. Researchers found fabric fragments in a cave. Purple fabric. Dated to around 1000 BC, the time of King Solomon. The color was Tyrian purple, made from sea snails. The dye was worth more than gold in the ancient world. Only royalty could afford it. The video showed the fabric. Close-up shots. That color. That exact deep royal purple. The same purple on my rag, sitting on the windowsill 10 feet away. My heart stopped. Actually stopped, then started again too fast. Pounding. Amber said something. Asked if I was okay. I was already off the cot, already moving to the windowsill. Grabbed the purple rag. Grabbed my phone. Held them next to each other. The same color. Exactly the same. The kind of match that couldn't be coincidence. Amber followed me. Asked what was wrong. What I'd found. I was pulling out the amphora, showing her the yellow paste, explaining about the sunlight, about the color change, about the chest from the demolition site, about the 19th century textile family. Her eyes went wide. She understood before I did, before I let myself understand. She asked if I knew what this might be, if I understood what I might have. I held the purple rag under my phone's flashlight. The color was so deep, it almost looked black until the light hit it right. Then it blazed. Royal, imperial, the color of power, the color of kings. I told her I thought I found something impossible, something that shouldn't exist anymore, something that was supposed to be lost to history, something that might be worth more than Uncle Mark's truck, more than his house, more than everything I'd ever owned combined. Amber grabbed my shoulders, told me not to tell anyone else yet, not until we knew for sure, not until we understood what we actually had. Smart girl, careful girl, the kind of girl who thinks before acting, the kind of girl who balances out guys like me who find things in demolished buildings and don't think about consequences until they're already committed. I sealed the amphora back up, hid it in the metal chest, shoved the chest under my cot, covered it with dirty laundry and spare blankets, made it invisible, made it safe, made it mine until I figured out what the hell to do next. We spent the rest of the night researching. Tyrian purple, Murex snails, ancient dye production, market value, modern synthesis. Every article we could find, every scholarly paper, every auction record. Building a picture of what I might have, what I might be sitting on, what might change everything. The numbers didn't make sense at first, seemed too high, too impossible, but they kept coming up. $3,000 per gram for authentic ancient Tyrian purple dye. More if it was proven period correct. More if it was pure. More if it was concentrated. The amphora held maybe 11 pounds of paste. Call it 5 kilograms. 5,000 grams if it was pure dye. $15 million if the numbers were right. If the paste was what I thought it was. If I wasn't crazy. If this wasn't some elaborate self-delusion brought on by too much limestone dust and not enough sleep. Amber asked what I was going to do, how I was going to verify it, who I was going to tell. I didn't have answers. Just the rag. Just the purple. Just the impossible thing sitting under my cot sealed in a lead chest in my uncle's workshop, while somewhere across town my parents slept in their falling-apart house, never knowing their trash had found something they couldn't even imagine. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd call me garbage. Said I was waste they needed to dispose of. And now I was sitting in a cold workshop holding a rag stained with the color of emperors, wondering if the garbage they threw away had just found a treasure worth more than they'd earn in 10 lifetimes. I looked at Amber in the blue glow of my phone screen, told her I needed to figure out how to test this, how to verify it, how to make sure I wasn't insane before I told anyone, especially before I told Uncle Mark, the man who'd taken me in when nobody wanted me, who'd given me work and space and a chance to be something other than a mistake. If this was real, it was his too, his find, his property, his because I was living in his workshop and working his jobs and using his tools. The question wasn't just what I'd found. It was what came next, who to tell, who to trust, how to turn impossible into actual without getting robbed or killed or legally destroyed. Amber squeezed my hand, told me we'd figure it out, together, one step at a time, like adults, like people who didn't panic when the universe handed them something that should not exist but somehow did. I nodded, put the amphora back in the chest, shoved it deeper under the cot. We went back to the bed, tried to sleep. I couldn't, just lay there staring at the ceiling, at the cold workshop around me, at the impossible purple rag I'd stuffed in my jacket pocket like evidence, like proof. Like the universe's way of saying sometimes the trash finds treasure, and sometimes justice looks like chemical reactions under sunlight, and sometimes the people who throw you away never know what they lost until it's way too late to matter. The next morning, Amber and I sat in the workshop staring at the amphora, like it might disappear if we looked away. The winter sun came through the window at an angle, cold light, clear, the kind of light that doesn't lie. Uncle Mark had a friend, Professor something. I never caught his last name. Taught chemistry at the state university. Did consulting work on the side. Materials analysis. Forensics sometimes. Uncle Mark called him about weird things crews found in old buildings. Clay pipes. Vintage medicine bottles. Once, a Civil War-era bayonet stuck in a wall stud. I asked Uncle Mark if we could talk to the professor. Didn't tell him why. Just said we found something interesting in that textile archive demolition. Something that might be valuable. Maybe, probably not, but worth checking. Uncle Mark made the call. Set up a meeting for that afternoon. The university chemistry building smelled like every educational institution built in the 1970s. Cinder block walls painted institutional beige. Linoleum floors waxed to a dull shine. Fluorescent lights that hummed at a frequency that made your teeth ache if you paid attention. We found the professor's office on the third floor. Door was open. He waved us in without looking up from whatever he was reading. Professor Chun, mid-50s, reading glasses on a chain around his neck. Coffee mug that said something about molecular bonds in faded letters. The office was small. Books everywhere. Paper stacked in a system that probably made sense to him, but looked like chaos to everyone else. I pulled out a Ziploc bag. Had a sample of the paste inside. Maybe a teaspoon worth. Also had the purple rag. The one that had been sitting in sunlight. The color was still vivid. Still impossible. Professor Chin took the bag. Held it up to the light. Opened it. Sniffed. Made a face. Asked what I thought it was. I told him I didn't know. Found it in a sealed lead chest in a building from the 1800s. Textile merchant family. The paste was yellow until sunlight hit it. Then it turned purple. Deep purple. Royal purple. I showed him the rag. He looked at the rag. Looked at the paste. Looked at me. Then looked at Uncle Mark. Asked if this was a joke. Some kind of prank. Uncle Mark assured him it wasn't. We genuinely wanted to know what we had. Professor Chin sat back in his chair. The springs creaked. He explained that he couldn't tell us anything definitive from visual inspection. Could be old paint. Could be some kind of oxidized industrial compound. Could be a modern reproduction of something historical. Could be actual historical dye. He'd need to run tests. Spectrometry. Chemical analysis. Maybe send samples to specialists in organic chemistry. In archaeological materials. This wasn't his primary field. He'd need help. He asked if we understood what that meant. The cost. The time. The possibility that we'd spend money and find out it was just old paint worth nothing. I asked how much. He thought about it. Wrote numbers on a notepad. Scratched them out. Wrote more. Finally landed on $5,000. That would cover his time. Lab fees. Consultation with specialists. Analysis that would stand up to scrutiny if the results were significant. $5,000. I had maybe $3,000 saved from 6 months of construction work. Uncle Mark looked at me. I looked back. He asked if I was sure. If I really wanted to risk that money on what might be nothing. I was sure. We pooled our savings. Wrote the professor a check. He took it. Said he'd call when he had results. Might be 2 weeks. Might be 3. These things took time. We left the university with considerably less money and nothing but a receipt to show for it. Uncle Mark tried to make jokes about it on the drive home. Said I'd better be right. Said I'd be working off that debt for months if this turned out to be old paint. But I could hear the hope in his voice. The same hope I felt. The maybe that makes people do stupid things with money they can't afford to lose. Christmas came. New Year's. The professor hadn't called. Life kept moving forward the way it does. Work slowed down in January. Too cold. We did interior jobs. Helped the crew renovate a church basement. Painted walls. Laid new floor tiles. Honest work that paid hourly and left my hands stained with grout. Amber and I celebrated my 18th birthday at the diner. Pie and bad coffee. She gave me a book about ancient civilizations. I gave her a necklace I'd found in an estate sale. Silver. Simple. She loved it because I'd thought of her. The money didn't matter. The thought did. Uncle Mark kept making jokes. Called me his little millionaire. Asked when I was buying him that Ferrari. Laughed at his own jokes. But I could see him looking at the phone sometimes. Waiting. Hoping. We'd gambled. Now we were waiting to see if the dice came up snake eyes or jackpot. 3 weeks after we'd given Professor Chen our sample, my phone rang. Late afternoon. February cold that made your face hurt. I was in the workshop organizing tools. Saw the university number on the caller ID. Answered. Professor Chen's voice sounded different. Tight. Controlled. Like he was trying very hard to sound calm and failing. He asked if I could come to his office. Now. Soon as possible. Bring Uncle Mark. Don't tell anyone else. Don't mention this to anyone. The tone made my stomach drop. Either we'd wasted $5,000, or something was very, very wrong. Or very, very right. I couldn't tell which. We drove to university. Uncle Mark didn't joke. Didn't say anything. Just drove. His hands were tight on the wheel. White knuckles. He felt it too. The weight of whatever was coming. Professor Chen met us at his office door, pulled us inside, closed the door, locked it. That's when I knew. Whatever he'd found, it was significant. He had papers spread across his desk, printouts, charts, chemical formulas I didn't understand, photos of the paste under microscopes, the purple color magnified until you could see individual crystals, geometric structures that looked alien. Beautiful. Impossible. He sat us down, took off his reading glasses, rubbed his eyes, started talking. The paste was Tyrian purple. Genuine. Authentic. Ancient dye extracted from Murex brand-era sea snails. He'd verified it with 3 separate specialists. Sent samples to a colleague who specialized in ancient Mediterranean trade goods. Another who worked in archaeochemistry. A third who did materials analysis for museums. All 3 confirmed it. This was the real thing. He explained how it worked. The science behind the impossible. Murex snails produce a colorless secretion from a gland in their body. Hypobranchial gland. Sounds made up, but it's real. The secretion is clear. Yellowish at most. Completely unimpressive. But expose it to sunlight and oxygen, and something magical happens. Chemical reaction. Photochemical transformation. The molecules rearrange. The color emerges. Pale at first. Then lavender. Then deeper. Then that royal purple that emperors killed for. The ancient dye makers knew this. Would extract the secretion. Expose it to sun. The smell was reportedly unbearable. Rotting sea creatures and sulfur. They did the work outside cities. Downwind. The stench was legendary. But the color was worth it. The color was power. He showed us historical records. Roman laws forbidding anyone below a certain rank from wearing Tyrian purple. Death penalty for violations. Byzantine emperors signing documents with purple ink made from this same dye. The color of divine right. The color of authority. When Constantinople fell in 1453, the knowledge nearly died with it. The supply chains collapsed. The craftsmen scattered. The secret was lost. Modern chemistry could synthesize similar purples, close approximations, but not identical. The molecular structure of natural Tyrian purple from Murex snails was unique, specific, identifiable, and incredibly difficult to recreate exactly. Museums paid fortunes for verified samples. Researchers studied it. Collectors wanted it. The market value was absurd. Professor Chen pulled out his final calculation. He'd been conservative, used the lowest estimates he could justify, based on the weight of the sample, the purity, the verification from multiple specialists. He estimated the amphora held approximately 5 kilograms of concentrated dye paste. At current market rates for verified ancient Tyrian purple, accounting for purity and historical significance, the value was approximately $18.5 million. The number hung in the air. Uncle Mark made a sound. Not quite a laugh. Not quite a gasp. Just air leaving his lungs. I felt nothing. The number was too big. My brain couldn't process it. 18 million. 18 million dollars. I asked how sure he was. Professor Chin said as sure as science could be. Multiple verifications. The chemical signature was unmistakable. This wasn't paint. Wasn't a modern reproduction. This was genuine pre-industrial Tyrian purple. Probably sealed in the 1800s by someone who understood its value. Hidden. Preserved. Waiting. Uncle Mark asked what we should do. How to proceed. You don't just walk into a bank with 5 kilos of ancient dye and ask them to cash it out. Professor Chin agreed. He'd need discretion. A finder's fee for his silence and his expertise. He suggested $100,000. Seemed fair, given what he'd done. What he could do with that information, if he chose to. We agreed. We didn't have the money yet. But when we did, he'd get his cut. He'd earned it. More importantly, we needed him quiet. Needed time to figure out how to convert something priceless into something usable without getting robbed, or killed, or legally destroyed by people who claimed the find belonged to someone else. Uncle Mark knew a lawyer, corporate guy, handled business formations, estate planning, trusts. We met with him the next day, explained the situation in vague terms, said I'd come into a significant asset, needed it protected, needed it structured so nobody could take it. Not my parents. Not through some family law provision. Not through any means. The lawyer understood. Asked my age. When I said 18, he nodded. Good timing. We could set up an irrevocable trust. Uncle Mark would be the initial trustee, temporary guardian of the asset, until the legal structure was solid. Then I'd take full control. The trust would be untouchable. Creditors couldn't access it. Family couldn't claim it. Even a court order would struggle to penetrate the protections if it was structured correctly. The paperwork took days. Signatures on dozens of pages. Legal language so dense it made my eyes cross. But each page was protection. Each signature was armor. By the time we finished, the die and its value were locked in a legal fortress that would take years and millions in legal fees to even attempt to breach. Uncle Mark sat with me that night in the workshop, asked what I wanted to do with it, with the money, with the future that had just opened up like a door I didn't know existed. I told him half was his. He'd taken me in, given me work, given me a chance when nobody else would. The die came from his job site, found during his work. He deserved half, not negotiable. He tried to argue. I wouldn't let him. We were partners in this. Equal, fair, the way family was supposed to work, but never had in my experience. We sold it over the next year, carefully, through specialized brokers who dealt in historical materials, museums, private collectors, research institutions. The sales were quiet, discreet, amounts that didn't raise flags. Money transferred through proper channels, taxed appropriately, legal, clean. By my 19th birthday, the AMFA was empty and our accounts were full. Uncle Mark expanded his business, bought better equipment, hired more guys, took on bigger projects, stayed in restoration work because he loved it, because the money didn't change what he wanted to do with his days, just made it easier to do it right. I went to college, studied business, real estate development, learned how money worked, how to make it grow, how to turn 18 million into 30 million, then 40, how to build something that would last. That meant something. Amber stayed with me through all of it, graduated, got her degree. We moved in together, planned a future that looked nothing like the past either of us had known. She kept me grounded, kept me real, reminded me that the money was just a tool, not the point, never the point. 8 years passed, 8 years of building, learning, growing, becoming someone I barely recognized from that 17-year-old kid who'd overheard his parents planning to institutionalize him. I became a partner in Uncle Mark's company. We rebranded, expanded, historic restoration, and adaptive reuse. We saved buildings that deserved saving, made them useful again. It felt right. Full circle. From demolition to preservation. From destruction to creation. Which brings me to why I'm telling you this story. Why I'm sitting here now thinking about things I've tried not to think about for almost a decade. Last month, Amber and I drove through my old neighborhood. Not planning to. Just happened to be in the area, taking a scenic route. The kind of accidental decision that feels like fate messing with you. I saw the house. My old house. The place I'd escaped from in the middle of the night, with everything I owned in a backpack. It looked worse than I remembered, like time had given up on it. Peeling paint, broken fence, yard overgrown with weeds and trash, windows dark. The kind of dark that means nobody's home, or nobody cares enough to turn on lights. I slowed down, didn't stop, wasn't ready. Amber put her hand on mine, asked if I want to keep driving. I did. We left, but the image stayed with me, rotted into my thoughts like water damage into wood. I asked around, discreetly, found out my parents were still there, still living in that dying house. My sister, too. 3 kids now, all under 10. Caleb had been in and out of jail. Mostly in. The whole family was drowning in debt, behind on everything. The house was in foreclosure. They were months away from eviction. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No sympathy. Just that same hollow space where feelings about them used to be. They'd made their choices. I'd made mine. The universe had sorted us accordingly. But Amber asked me something. Asked if I needed closure. If I needed to go back. Not to help. Not to save them. Just to close the loop. To look them in the eye one time as an adult. As someone who'd survived them. As proof that the trash they'd tried to throw away had turned into something they could never touch. I thought about it for a week. Then agreed. Not for them. For me. One visit. One conversation. Then done forever. We drove over on a Saturday. February again. 8 years, almost the day from when Professor Chin had called with impossible news. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. I'd left this place with nothing. Came back with everything. The kind of poetic justice that only works in stories, except this was real. This was my life. I parked at the curb. Same curb where the Grand AM had sat that night. Different car now. Something tasteful. Expensive but not showy. German engineering and leather seats. The kind of vehicle that announced success without screaming about it. Amber stayed in the car. This was mine to do. I walked up the cracked driveway. Each step felt surreal, like walking through a memory that had been archived and forgotten and was now being forced to load back into active consciousness. The porch steps creaked. Same creak. Some sounds don't change. I knocked, waited, heard movement inside. Slow, reluctant. The door opened. My father stood there, older, thinner, wearing a stained undershirt and jeans that had seen better decades. His face was wrong. Age beyond the years. Collapsing on itself the way faces do when hope leaves and doesn't come back. He stared at me, didn't recognize me at first. His eyes were blank, then suspicious. Probably thought I was a debt collector, or someone from the county about the foreclosure. Then his eyes focused, really looked, saw something familiar in my face. The recognition came slowly, like his brain needed time to process what it was seeing. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. My mother appeared behind him. She'd aged worse. The kind of aging that comes from giving up in increments until there's nothing left but the biological process of staying alive. She looked at me, at my coat, my watch, my shoes. Her gaze dropped to her own feet, slippers with holes in them. The same cheap slippers she'd probably been wearing for 5 years, because buying new ones meant admitting the old ones were garbage, and who had money for that? My father's face transformed. Suspicion became recognition, became desperate hope in the span of 3 seconds. He said my name, like a question, like he couldn't believe it. Then he was talking, fast, overlapping sentences, saying he knew I'd come back, knew I'd help. They were in trouble, real trouble. Sister was pregnant again. 4th kid. Caleb needed a lawyer. Good one. Expensive. They were being evicted. Needed money. Just a loan. Just enough to get current. He was my father. Family. Blood. I had to help. My mother was nodding, backing him up, saying they'd always loved me. Always knew I'd be successful. They were proud. So proud. Just needed a little help. Temporary. They'd pay it back. Promise. I stood there listening to them perform. Watched them hit their marks. Deliver their lines. The same script they'd probably use on everyone who'd ever try to help them. The same manipulation, refined over decades of practice. They were good at it. Desperate people usually are. I let them finish. Waited until the words ran out. Until they stood there breathing hard. Waiting for my response. For the rescue that would fix everything. For the magical moment when their trash son, who they'd try to dispose, would save them from themselves. I spoke quietly, barely above a whisper, told them I remembered that night. The kitchen, the planning, the word mistake, the discussion about pins and state facilities, and how to legally dispose of me like garbage. Told them I'd heard every word. Stood in the darkness listening to them plot my removal, like I was a broken appliance they needed to haul to the dump. They went pale. Both of them. My father started to speak. Started to make excuses. I kept talking. Told them they'd call me trash. Said I was garbage they didn't need. Wanted me gone so they could focus on real family. The family that mattered. I told them they'd been right about one thing. There was trash in this situation. But it wasn't me. They'd wanted to get rid of the garbage. Mission accomplished. They'd succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. They'd gotten rid of me. Had the house to themselves. Could focus on what mattered. I told them I'd found out what I was worth. Turned out to be significantly more than they'd ever imagined. More than they'd see in 10 lifetimes of the choices they made. The trash they threw away had found treasure in the dirt they'd sent me to. The garbage knew its value now, and they could enjoy the cleanliness, the purity. The house free of the waste they'd wanted gone. My father tried to grab my arm. Started yelling, saying I owed them. They'd raised me, fed me, clothed me. I owed them everything. This was family. You don't abandon family. I pulled my arm free. Told them they'd abandoned me first. 8 years ago, when they plotted to institutionalize me for convenience. When they called me a mistake. When they chose a nursery over their own son. They'd made their decision. I was just respecting it. My mother was crying, begging, saying she was sorry, saying they'd been wrong, saying things they should have said 8 years ago, but didn't because they never thought they'd need me, never thought the garbage would become valuable. I turned, walked back to the car. My father followed, yelling, cursing, saying things that probably would have hurt if I cared. But I didn't. That part of me that could be hurt by them had died in a dark hallway listening to them plot my disposal. What walked away now was just closure. Just the final acknowledgement that they were my past and would never be my future. Amber started the engine. I got in, closed the door. The soundproofing in German cars is excellent. Cut off my father's voice mid-curse. Turned it into pantomime. Just mouth shapes and impotent rage. I pulled on my seatbelt. Amber asked if I was okay. I nodded. I was better than okay. I was free. Actually free. The kind of free that comes from looking your demons in the eye and realizing they're just sad, broken people who never had power over you. Only the power you gave them. And I was taking that back now. Had been taking it back for 8 years. This was just the final signature. Amber put the car in drive. We pulled away from the curb. Smooth acceleration. Perfect engineering. In the side mirror, I saw my father standing in the street, growing smaller. His figure against the backdrop of that dying house. The peeling paint. The broken fence. The whole tableau of choices and consequences played out in physical form. The mirror made him smaller. Smaller. Until he was just a dot. Then nothing. Just empty road behind us and clear highway ahead. The past receding. The future approaching. The way it always does if you're brave enough to keep moving forward. I'd started in that house as a mistake. Left it as trash. Came back as someone they couldn't touch. Couldn't hurt. couldn't reduce to the small, scared thing they tried to dispose of. The trash had found its value, had found its color, that deep royal purple that only appears when light hits in exactly the right way. The color of kings. The color of people who survive despite everything. The color of knowing your worth regardless of what anyone else thinks. We drove. The house disappeared behind us. My father disappeared behind us. The whole toxic history disappeared behind us like morning fog burning off under clean sunlight. And for the first time in my entire life, I felt completely, totally, finally clean.